You're listening to the Governor's Podcast, which is hosted by school governors, for school governors, and for all involved in or impacted by education governance. On the Governor's Podcast, we have open, honest, and transparent discussions about governance in the UK education sector, sharing and providing insights into the realities of entering the boardroom, sitting around the governing board table, and leaning in.
Hello, I'm Sharon Warmington and I support schools and academies as a governor, governance practitioner and a clerk. I'm also the CEO of the National Black Governors Network, supporting the education sector in diversifying their governing boards.
And it's Olivia D. Hind here, an under 30, unapologetically black female who is changing the face and space of school governance.
And you're listening to the Governor's Podcast. Okay, let's get into today's topic.
What would you say are your initial feelings towards training as a school governor or for school governors?
I've got mixed feelings, mixed opinions, mixed experiences.
Okay.
Both positive and negative in all of those categories, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Training is necessary.
100%.
I fundamentally believe now, especially as I've been more involved in the diversity agenda, in having an element of training before being appointed.
Were you supposed to, right? That's like...
No.
Oh, you're talking about even before induction.
Yeah.
You're talking about just when you're considering becoming a school governor.
Because it's all well and good to have all this training available afterwards, but that in itself can be very overwhelming for people, and it goes back to my view that there should be almost like a probationary period of governors. So when you've identified a governor, you almost want to get them started in the right way. And I've trialed this in one of the schools that I clerk, actually, where the governors, the vacancies won't become available until the new academic year, but the new governors have almost already been appointed. They attend the governing meetings as observers.
Right, okay.
And I've already started the induction process and getting them lined up for training and almost drip feeding it.
So it's almost like getting them into the flow, the pace, the groove of things.
Because
before they're literally on the track sprinting.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because I think the feedback that I get and my own experience as a governor, because I'm in the space, I get it. I totally understand it and I get it. So I know you've got to do the safeguarding training and, safer recruitment and all the different things.
Yeah.
But if you are not from the education sector at all, and you are not necessarily somebody who's used to training, and you're coming to the space
cold, basically.
Yes. It's really difficult when you're landed with
an overwhelming amount of information.
It's really hard. And I take it a bit further, slightly away from education. My dad, up until this year actually, was a hospital chaplain. And in his 70s, he retired at 80. But as part of the NHS, they have the standard training for all staff, irrespective of what role you play.
Okay.
And so it would be information governance and clinical waste and certain things. And it just didn't make sense to him.
Yeah.
And at 70 odd years old, as a hospital chaplain, he's thinking, how is this relevant to what I actually do? But sometimes you get into a habit where it's another tick box that all governors have to go down this particular route of training when we're not really looking at is it really, really relevant for every single member of the governing body to go through it?
You mean specific types of training?
Yeah. Induction. There are certain things that yes, all governors need to go through, but others that not every governor needs to go through. Again, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And also, how do we measure the impact?
Yes, of course.
Because if all you're looking for as a school is that
certificate,
that certificate, that doesn't measure impact. That just means that the governor has listened. I'm talking about online specifically now. Listen to the training delivery. They could have easily clicked through. A lot of them have the answers embedded in the text anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's really how do you measure it?
And I will also say kind of segue into the timing at which training comes out, because I remember there was one point where I literally just felt like some school student completing homework just so that I don't miss the teacher's deadline. So I'm there cramming everything to get it done before the end of half term.
Like you're doing exams all over again.
Yes, exactly. And it was not a great feeling. And even though I'm very much a lifelong learner, I'm the eternal student, I love learning new information. Absolutely. And my brain stores information. So it's not to say that I was reading through and not digesting anything. Mm-hmm. However, just going back to what you were saying in terms of effectiveness and impact, when I'm reading or doing courses that are, doing them all at the same time, that are all due at the same time, that are all set and due at the same time, and there's like 4, 5, 6, 7 of them, it's really thinking about
sometimes. What training are you doing?
Because sometimes you just get sent an email and saying this is the list of mandatory training that you need to complete, and even the non-mandatory, like it's then flagged if you don't complete it, so they may as well say you need to do everything, and it's all on the same provider. So I think once schools find a provider, they try and get as many of the different topics in that. But you have all sorts of stuff like anti-bribery, fire safety. I must admit the fire safety one was very interesting. I did not know different things come out of those things, like those fire extinguishers. I did not know that you get all sorts of materials coming out of them.
And there's a different one depending on the type of fire. Yeah,
I learned a lot. But I think what that highlighted was I don't work in an office. In an office situation, if you go to an office every day and you see the firemen...
You as a governor were doing a fire...
Yes, it was all sorts. Yes.
And that was mandatory?
I can't remember which list it was on. I just know that if I didn't complete it, I wouldn't... would flag as incomplete courses.
As a trainer, because I'm a trainer, and when I used to deliver live in-person sessions... when it came to the housekeeping at the beginning, it'd be like, we're not expecting any fire alarms, and I would say if an alarm goes off, then we're following that person because they work here.
Exactly. I don't know the building.
They will know the building. They will know the rules and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but so
I would question
what those. It speaks to what you were saying about some courses. Or some training, is it meant to be for governors full stop? Yeah. Let alone is it meant to be for all governors? So I completed them anyway because, I just don't like the weight of having something done.
You don't like to disappoint teacher.
No, it's not that. I'm not in school anymore and I wouldn't want to go back, to be honest. But, I mean, it's just, for me as a governor, I just feel like let me get it out the way. Let me do it. But I also don't think you should have that attitude all the time. I mean, the ones that I take more seriously are the ones that I'm a link governor for example.
Oh, that's a different thing.
So so I understand the safeguarding and it's very insightful. I think of training as like, you go to the gym, you train your muscles to be better. So in terms of like taking in knowledge and information, you're training your brain to understand more. So now when the topic of safeguarding comes up, there's things that are mentioned and I can link it back to a piece of training that I've done and all that kind of stuff. So that I understand. But I think what would help for me as a governor is if training is spread out across the academic year. So it's not lumped together. Yeah. These are all the things you have to do and get them done by March. That doesn't help me because for someone who's got so many different commitments between September and March, I then end up doing it at the beginning of March to get it done by the end of March, and then it's not really been useful.
But then what value? How is that then? How are you digesting the learning?
Exactly.
If you're cramming it.
Exactly.
The thing for me is, I'm a very different kind of trainer and also learner. My learning style is very different. So even though I can learn from online, if it's boring,
oh gosh, if the people have no personality,
oh my words,
don't.
And the monotone
that's why
tone.
That's why some courses take me so long,
It's
because
really
I can't
hard.
sit. You can't sit for half an hour, let alone 2 hours, listening to someone drone.
Yes, literally drone. Yeah.
Or looking at training that's got no visual, no colour, no change of tone.
And I don't know where that came from, that people thought that that's how online training needs to be delivered. And I would say that's why a number of people just don't even entertain it.
Can I admit something?
Go on.
There's a piece of training I've done recently. When I say recently, within the last 6 months. And the visuals, the pictures were so... I was offended.
Yes.
And not offended based on culture or background or even, as a governor position or whatever. I was offended at the fact that we are in 2021 and these images of real people look like post-war Britain.
Wow. Were they black and white as well?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
But I'm looking at these images of the children, because I think it was around safeguarding or keeping children safe, or I think it was around those. And I was like, you mean to tell me that we are in the 21st century and we have all these beautiful children around us and school buildings and the cities and towns that we live in, that schools are set up in, the communities out there, and you're using post-war Britain photos for photographs?
How do you know that they were post-war?
You can see from the hairstyles.
Okay.
You can see from the type of uniforms or lack thereof, or the type of footwear, the way that down to the floor, the ground, like the cobbles and the chimneys with children with black soot down their face, like industrial. I was offended, and therefore. Are you going
to name and shame the provider? You don't have to.
I don't think I should.
Okay.
I don't think I did complete the evaluate. I very rarely do evaluation forms because it just longs out the training process.
Yeah.
I've already sat through the listening of the information and done the quizzes. The last thing I want to do is then complete another form. Mm-hmm. But that one, I had to put a comment and just say, I am disappointed at the lack of relevance and being current and showing the beauty of our education system and sector today, because you're showing early 1900 imagery.
No, that's crazy. I remember doing an online, I think it was safeguarding, or it may have been equality and diversity. I can't even remember. Mm-hmm. But the imagery, they weren't even people.
It was art or something.
It was like art.
You've seen that too.
And I did an evaluation as well, because I was offended. I was offended on the basis of race, because even in this art, it was, I don't even know what they call it, because I'm not into.
But it was from
fine
one
art
of those
like
previous eras.
Yeah, it was from the Renaissance era or something, whatever it was. But the art was animals, really animals dressed up, which just doesn't make sense to me. Really doesn't make sense to me. But the reason why I was offended is because when it got to it was about equality and diversity. Okay. And when it got to something around prejudice or discrimination, they had, for the first time in the whole of the training, an image of a dark animal. Right. Okay. So a black animal. Mm-hmm. All the other, they were mainly dogs. Mm-hmm. All the other images were white. Mm-hmm. But then when it came to the negative part of the course, they changed the image to a black dog.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, seriously?
Yeah, and it's very uncomfortable.
And that is why when I'm delivering training around the issue of diversity,
yeah,
especially race, I say that you have to look at things through the lens of race. Whatever it is that you've got, whether it's a document or it's a report or anything, you have to, in today's society, look at it.
In today's society, that's what's so important.
Look at it through the lens of race, specifically, because then you will begin to see how other people see it.
Yeah.
And for that alone, I would not recommend that provider. I mean, I'm no longer with the trust. I did raise it at trust level.
Yeah.
But again, being one of few
the voice doesn't
black
carry
people,
enough. But then we should still use
our voice. It was almost like,
voice.
well, you know, it's the Renaissance period, and that's just
but that doesn't make it okay.
That's not okay.
And that's why I mentioned the what I saw, because obviously when you think of post-war Britain,
it's age,
age. Literally, the photographs look aged.
Yeah.
So no, bring it current.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you think of post-war Britain and the types of photographs or the type of people who were in those photographs back then, you don't see the diversity that you do now in schools.
Yeah.
So I don't even need to mention that there was a lack of diversity. Let me just tell you what era that they took the photos in and what era they're showing them in.
Yeah.
Because this wasn't a history lesson.
Yeah.
This was about safeguarding or whatever now.
And the safeguarding issues that were in post-war Britain are completely different.
Or they're changed. They've updated, or they're more in your face. And you've got to think about what are we trying to say about Britain now, and what are we looking to achieve moving forward? What are we moving towards? Otherwise, if you just keep going back, I'm not saying that any artwork that took place, or visuals or photographs that were taken place took place or were taken of history are no longer relevant.
No.
I'm saying make it relevant to the content
today,
that you're delivering,
especially because your audience, the governing body audience now is changing.
It's changing
Both in terms of across all the protected characteristics, it's changing, and so it's important. You can't be, I call it lazy training.
It is.
It's very, very lazy. You, with the wealth of imagery that's out there now, you know, I talk to schools about recruiting from diverse communities. You have to reflect them, not who you are.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you walk into a supermarket and you see a bread aisle. There's bread, as I think I've mentioned before, I love olive bread. You don't understand that.
No, I don't.
You know, but you can get sliced bread, but then you can get thick sliced bread.
Yes.
You can get medium sliced bread. You can get, you know, the variety's
People have
there.
choices.
Right.
People see themselves.
Absolutely. So we could walk down the same aisle, and 10 people could walk down the same aisle.
And everyone has something for them.
Everybody chooses something different.
Yeah.
But they get what attracts them.
Yeah.
And it's the same with training.
Yeah.
We've got to not, especially on the back of lockdown, especially on the back of Zoom, people are now used to being in front of their computers.
Yes.
And so make the training more engaging.
Yes.
And relevant with real experiences. And
that helps. That really does.
And yes, it does. And it will, yes, it will take some investment.
Yes.
But investment is needed.
And it will, the right investment means you don't have to do it as frequently. It will last longer because you've invested in quality,
right? Exactly.
And what's current.
So what do you prefer, virtual or in person?
I think it depends on the type of training. I understand the benefits of being in person with training, because then you may get into groups and do certain things. But most of governor training is people just telling you information. If I'm honest, there's no interaction. It's not. There's no exercises. There's no role play or anything. Yeah. There's nothing for me to warrant me being there. Yeah. If anything, it just feels like I'm going to a class. I take notes. I leave. I get a certificate of attendance.
Yeah.
So for me, efficiency of time, because that's what I'm about for a large part of my professional activities, online makes sense, because then I can do it at my own pace.
Yes.
I don't need to block out 3-4 hours, like half a day, to travel somewhere, be somewhere, and then be learning at with people at the same pace when we're not really discussing. I like the chat feature. So if it's a case of it's facilitators delivering via Zoom or something, that's great, because I'm happy to be in the chat and see what other people are saying and comment and share experiences. But yeah, I do like that own pace, moving at your own pace, learning solo. And then I think what would be useful, or if people really wanted to bring in that discussion across colleagues, is this is why I think it's so important to spread it out across the academic year. Because you could set a piece of training, and then, I don't know, the first 10-15 minutes of an LGB meeting, you feedback on the recent training you've done.
I was just going to say that. Otherwise, what's the point?
You could be all around the same board, all doing this training, all at different times, and all have different takeaways, or nothing at all.
There's no feedback. There's no feedback, whether positively or negatively, to be honest.
Feedback can be positive too.
Yeah, absolutely. And just letting people know, because, I know that we're supposed to keep training records. This is... clerks usually do that, so informing your clerk of what training you've done
I do that.
Is important.
I do that across both schools. If I do something with one, I make sure I send the certificate to both.
So that they can keep accurate, up-to-date records. But there doesn't seem to be a place on the governing body agenda to feed back. You hear about training, and yes, you've got to do this, and I'm going to do my induction, or I'm signed up for the finance training or whatever. But maybe it's another way of governors becoming involved, especially new governors, is to do either a verbal or a written, if that's their preference, feedback on three key points, 3 pros, 3 cons, if there are any at all.
It could actually become, this is going to sound funny now, no pun intended, it could actually become an agenda item at meetings, training, just update on training, not update on what training is available, because I know those who are like head of governance and clerks may do that anyway. They may let you know, oh, by the way, we sent you all an email that the recent training, But I think it could be a standing item, or even at the beginning, at the end of an academic year, so basically autumn term and summer term, just to ask, has anyone completed any recent training? Do you have anything you want to share with the group? Because there could be something that one governor's completed and feeds forward on, because that's the term I prefer to use now, feed forward rather than feedback. And another governor will hear that and say, I've actually planned to do that once, so it's actually helpful to hear that. Or I'll do it, and maybe me and you can talk about it, something.
If the school, well, obviously it's a cost to the school, unless the training is free, it's a cost to the school. And if the school's not aware of whether the training is working or not, then why are you paying? We don't pay for things or continue to pay for things where it's not serving us.
100%.
We don't do that in our day-to-day lives. So why... I know schools that will sign up to a service that gives unlimited access to training, but governors are still not signing up for it. So that means that's a waste of money.
Wasted resource,
waste of money. Because you're paying for it annually.
Yeah.
But if it's not being taken up, then in essence your school is wasting that money. So we have to, as governors, be more responsible and more accountable. Yeah. So as well as making sure that the training is relevant and impactful, it's also making sure that we are doing it and we are reporting back on it.
Yeah, definitely.
Because training is vital, and that's not just for new governors coming in.
No, everyone.
I would say
it's just again, as important for those who have been there for a long time.
If you've been there for more than a term, then refresher training should be part of your annual training plan.
Yeah.
And I've just done a report for a charity, actually, well, a housing association, on behalf of a client. Individual appraisals are really good. I know that would put additional work on chairs because it's usually the chair that would do it. But some kind of form of evaluation, what's happened. This is, outside of the school agenda items, but how effective are we as a governing body? Who has found positive things? What are the negative? And have an open and transparent conversation.
You know what? I think something that's missing, and this may be something that we talk about in a future agenda item, maybe in our next season, which will be the next academic year, is looking at the agenda and how many of the agenda items are actually about the governing body, or are they all about the school?
Yeah.
That's something, because I think if there were 2 or 3 that were about the governing body, training, skills audit, the declaration of interest and things, like that.
Yeah, I know some schools have on their agenda something to the effect of at the very end, usually round about AOB, something like, how effective were we in moving the school forward at this meeting, or how has what we've talked about today made things better for the children in this school, or something like that.
Question that's posed.
Yeah,
really...
I've seen a number of clerks either proactively add that to their agenda or being asked to add that to their agenda.
Yeah.
I've not added it to any of my agendas, nor has it been requested to be added. But that's sort of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Where you do almost like a mini evaluation
of us as a body of people. What value have we added today? Have we offered, that will help, because then it will allow us to continue to evolve as an organism. I think it's very important, especially within the school community and the ecosystem of that, and us constantly looking at the effectiveness of this body. So that is training in itself, us learning how to better do our roles and execute our responsibilities.
Yeah, because training isn't just about the big items.
No.
It could be training on how to use the governor portal properly.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Training could be anything that allows you to do your duty.
To fulfill your role.
Yeah, exactly. So it's looking at it in a wider concept, because training is just another way of saying learning. It's something you're learning, and we are always learning. It's new. And so training shouldn't be left just to induction. I mean, I don't recall really having an induction for being a school governor. Someone who can sit through and say, look, this is the process of a meeting. It may sound very basic, but that would have helped.
I don't know
to just know what each of the items mean, and to know that when they say welcome and apologies, it's like, hi, thank you everyone for attending. Any apologies? No. Next item.
It would be actually interesting to see what induction training covers. Because
I don't know.
I think
induction training is just like, come and see the school, but I don't think it's really about you being a governor.
It's a long time since I've been on an induction training, but when I've delivered it, I've delivered it on behalf of a MAT, and this is how the MAT structure works, and this is how the LGBs sit within that and all. But local authority training, induction training, because I haven't attended one, I don't know what it involves, but I don't think it involves the kind of basic things like what you're talking about. I think it's an overview of what governance is.
Yes, I was just about to say
what your role and what it means to challenge, but not
information heavy, not practice,
not practical stuff.
It's not about practice. It's about there's these are the channels for communication here, and this is how many times you have your
and this
meeting.
And this is the governor's handbook.
And this is the CEO here. And this is the head of this department over here. And this is the name of your head at your school. But they're also a part of this cluster over here. No, when I attend that meeting, what do? When do I put my hand up? Do I put my hand up? Or do I just speak? When someone's presenting a paper, if they say something that I have a question on, do I have to wait until they literally finish speaking?
That is so
or can
true.
I ask, when they take a pause?
I call that
training.
assumed knowledge.
Yeah, it is.
There is an assumption that people entering the space know and are used to. I've always been used to attending meetings because of my career. Yeah. So I knew the etiquette of being in meetings and all of that. Mm-hmm. But if you're somebody who's coming new to the space, who's not used to meetings,
exactly.
Then how do you know?
How do you know?
How do you know what to do?
Otherwise, that first meeting is so awkward for you. You're just sitting there
because you arrive and you may help yourself to a cup of tea or whatever.
And then all of a sudden the spotlight's on you because you're the new person.
Yeah, nobody's told you that you may have to introduce yourself.
And then what do you say? Do you even if you are I find it weird when I'm not the new person and they're doing the round robin, whatever. What do I say? Am I saying my full name and what position I have here? Am I saying, hi, I'm Olivia D. Hines. I'm the Safeguarding Link Governor. I'm the chair of the Teaching and Learning Committee. I'm the vice chair. I'm the Equality and Diversity Inclusion Link Governor. Or do I say, I'm Olivia D. Hines. I do private virtual tutoring. I also do social media management. But here, this is my position. What do I do? Or do I just say, I'm Olivia D. Hines and I've been here for 2 years?
Because as a new person around that space, all you're hearing is names and titles.
And you're sitting there I ain't got a clue. I know you just said who your name is and you just smile and nod. Smile and nod.
Because you can't retain that. You can't retain that.
No, it's weird. So that's training.
Maybe we need another
episode. We need a series on training. Wow. What we would suggest, what we've experienced, what we wouldn't do again, all that stuff. So what would be...
Wait, somebody's going to join the governing body having listened to this.
And think, okay, you guys need to slow down. Right, say, can you write it down?
Yeah.
Can I, because I was listening to the governor's podcast and they told me it was going to be way too quick. There's 10 of you in here and there's one me. You guys clearly know each other. And you're not going to remember me much, are you? Because I'm not going to speak for the next 90 minutes because I don't know when to speak. Oh gosh! Wow.
That is funny.
Okay. So
we've digressed.
We have.
But it's all relevant.
It is. So, takeaway. What would be your takeaway regarding training?
Going back to the online space because that is here to stay. And as a deliverer, a creator of training content myself, both in person and online, my plea to those creating content for the education system is to make it more engaging.
Definitely.
To embrace the 21st century in all your imagery and in your tonality and diversity as a whole. So yeah, that would be my takeaway.
My takeaway would be something you said actually, in terms of being more accountable, being aware of how accountable I am or how accountable I hold my colleagues to us as governors and the training that we do. So not necessarily me quizzing my colleagues on when they last completed training or anything, but maybe finding out, very much like what one of my takeaways in a previous episode was, it's more of an action, finding out the process for tracking training, because sometimes I find that I may submit a certificate to someone and then 2 months later they're asking for the same certificate. So I'm thinking, how is that actually recorded? And, are they really taking commentary on how? So if I did say how that training was, is there any action that's followed up on that? So I think it's looking at the whole process of training, looking at me as someone who's participating in it. Am I cramming, or am I spreading it across the academic year? Am I finding that I'm getting a link that has 6-7 courses on it? Or is it just me who's leaving them all, and then it seems like I'm having to do everything one go? Am I completing those evaluation forms? And if I'm not, why am I not? Because that's the only way you can get some kind of understanding of what the impact was, how effective it was. And if you don't tell anyone that it wasn't useful to you, how can you expect anyone to know that it wasn't useful to you?
Or for it to change.
Or for it to change. So I think it's me personally, and also thinking of myself as a part of a wider body, in terms of accountability around training. How much do I understand how training works in this trust? Because I know it will be different across different schools and different trusts and academies, etc. But also my own practice, my own habits around governor training. I think it's looking at that more. I'm not saying that I'll get it right between now and September 2021, but it's a learning journey. Exactly.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please rate, review, and subscribe via your preferred streaming platform. The Governor's Podcast is a brand of the legal entity Education Governance Solutions Limited, and a free training resource for anyone. So if you know someone who is interested in becoming a governor or a trustee, please share this podcast with them. And if you'd like to get in touch with us directly with questions or comments, then drop us an email at thegovernorspodcast@gmail.com.
You can also follow us on social media platforms at The Governor's Podcast. Let's connect.